environmental matters committee set up.
Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order the, what's the date? September 22nd Environmental Matters Committee meeting. For the record, all the members are present. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. How about a motion to approve the minutes from July 14th?
I'll move approval of the minutes for the July 14th meeting.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I'm going to take privilege of the chair to rearrange the order because I know some folks from Public Works have some time commitments. So if Public Works would like to come up first and you can give your updates. I think first up we have an update on the city's erosion sediment control program and stormwater management program. Thank you. And could you just state your name and position for the record? Because I know some the positions have changed for both of you.
Good afternoon. So I'm David Gerald, Director of Public Works, and with me is, introduce yourself.
Betsy Mccann, Stormwater Program Manager in Public Works.
So we know that that on the agenda it said that we were going to discuss the erosion sediment control program, which we are. But this is actually going to be a broader discussion of the larger stormwater program. And we're going to discuss all the minimum control measures in the MS4 permit and our progress on each of those. Because those minimum control measures, of which erosion sediment control is one, are also important to our MS4 program, and so we feel like we feel like we're making great progress, and so we want to report on that. So I will first say that Betsy has been with us since 2017, and she's been an civil engineer too for the entire time managing projects, and she was recently selected to be the program manager for the Stormwater program, so we're very, very, very happy to have her in that position. It's a new position for her, so she's going to lead the discussion of the Stormwater program, and then we will both be here to answer questions. So I'll turn it over to Betsy to run through the presentation.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Yes, so you know my name. I'm Betsy Mccann, the new Stormwater Program Manager, and I'm very excited about this opportunity. Thank you for giving us time to come and speak with you today. Our goal today is to talk about the stormwater program and the improvements that we plan to make. So as you've heard, I'm now the Stormwater Program Manager, which is great because I'll be able to dedicate all my time to the program. I come into this position with over 25 years of experience in the stormwater field, so I'm very excited. We also have two stormwater engineers. We have one existing erosion and sediment control inspector, and we have a new one starting next week, which is also very exciting. So I wanted to start with a broad overview of the permit, the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Permit, which is a mouthful. We're phase 2. We're heading into year 4 of the 5-year permit. We anticipate that the permit will be administratively extended beyond that. You may or may not be familiar with all aspects of the permit, but I will get into more detail of all these minimum control measures as I progress through the presentation, as well as the impervious cover identification and restoration plan. So minimum control measure 1 is public education and outreach, and minimum control measure 2 is public involvement and participation. We're going to work towards updating the city's website where we have a lot of information there, but we're going to move all that information into Public Works and then also give it a big refresh. We are going to improve the employee training programs across all the departments, And we provided funding for a Chesapeake Bay Trust outreach grant program. And as I'll get into more detail later on in the presentation, there is a component of that grant program that includes outreach. We're going to continue the Greenscape events. I have some young children that participate in these events, so we're excited about those. And I'd also like to coordinate a stream cleaning event. Minimum Control Measure 3 is illicit discharge detection and elimination. We did a lot of work on this past year. We drafted a manual and we'll continue to update that manual. We've started training staff. We'll continue to train staff. I want to start training staff on illicit discharges across all the departments. We will continue to make procedure and data tracking improvements as we move forward. So as you are probably aware, we have contracted with GreenVest to assist us with the stormwater program. One area that they help us tremendously with is the stormwater mapping effort. So they're collecting GIS information of all the stormwater data around the city. I also am going to start very soon an outfall risk assessment to help us identify the big risks associated with outfalls, and then hopefully start implementing some of the downstream stream restoration work required associated with those outfalls. Minimum Control Measure 4 is the construction site stormwater runoff control. As we've already stated, we have a new inspector starting on next Thursday, and this will help us tremendously. We'll be able to really cover more ground and look at increasing the frequency of our inspections. We've drafted an improved erosion and sediment control guidelines. This will help us improve the inspection, violation, and the fining protocols. I sent a draft of those guidelines to Alderman Savage this week. I hope to receive comments, and then we'll work on finalizing a draft, and our next step will be to take that to the Rules and City Government Committee. We are also going to look at
Alderman Arnett?
Thank you. Is this a continuation of what Mike Johnson did in terms of the reporting format with the timestamp photos and all of that?
It is. So it's that same policy statement that you saw in the past. It never moved forward, so we're going to go ahead and smooth it and then bring it to rules to make it an official regulation.
Great, thank you.
And we're going to do the same with the policy that we did a few years ago for the 125% treatment of stormwater. That never was officially a regulation. So Betsy's going to get the great privilege to come to the Rules Committee twice for both of those to become regulations.
Very easy. Except for the chair.
So this will also be an area that will focus on training our staff as well, and we hope to get more of our staff the green card. Also, with the implementation of EnerGov, we are assuming that we'll be able to improve on process and data tracking as well. So I'm starting to get involved in that process and the rollout of that. So minimum control number 5 is post-construction stormwater management. This is another area that GreenVest helps us with, inspecting the best management practices. Per the permit, we are required to inspect all BMPs around the city every 3 years. Heading into the 4th year, we're 99% done. There's a handful that we didn't get, but we'll get those next year. We also I want to develop a strategy for the BMPs that failed the inspection. I'll also be working on the stormwater management improvement agreements, and I also want to improve the maintenance of the city-owned facilities, inclusive of gray and green infrastructure. Minimum control measure 6 is pollution prevention and good housekeeping. This is another area that GreenVest helped us with. They developed stormwater pollution prevention plans for all of these departments. These will be living documents, and we'll continue to update them, and this will also be an area that we will improve the training on. We also are in the process of purchasing a new street sweeper. So, yes, hold on.
Alderman Arnett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Gerald and I have talked about this over the years. Are we thinking at all about implementing a system where we have no parking on the street on one side a certain day of the month like they do in DC, I know?
We are indeed. In fact, a few years ago, you all approved a new position to coordinate all of that, and then it got graded improperly, so it became sort of a lower level administrative person instead of the higher level person that we needed. But we do need to do that. And we actually get stormwater credits through our MS4 permit if we do a proper street sweeping program. So that's why we bought this type of sweeper, the regenerative air sweeper, and need to start putting that into play. So we'll start that in Eastport.
I know, because there's no problems with parking in Eastport.
But yeah, it will take some coordination. But I think if we publicize that well and communicate the days that it's going to be closed, that people will eventually get used to it and learn.
Alderman Shannemeyer is going to get rid of all the parking in Eastport anyway, so. Yeah.
So another area of the permit and program is the impervious cover identification and the restoration plan. This is hot off the presses, but our current restoration requirement is only 5 impervious acres treated, which is wonderful. To meet that goal, we have a couple of strategies in place. One of those is we're going to continue the grant program with the Chesapeake Bay Trust. This program is a wonderful program where we've partnered with the trust. We give them approximately $300,000 a year. We are heading into year 2 of that program. And I have the current projects here. I can describe each of these projects in further detail. The Cedar Ridge Green Alley is going into construction, and we plan to have a ribbon cutting for that toward the end of October. The Nautilus Point Stormwater Mitigation, they're still in planning, starting design work. Waterways Stormwater Mitigation is in design. Tecumseh Condo Stormwater Management is finishing up design. They'll likely be asking us for construction funds next year. Harness Creek Pond is in design. Truxton Cove Watershed Assessment is in planning, and we just had a wonderful community meeting on that project last week. So all these projects will potentially get us over 20 acres of impervious treated. We also have the Hawkins Cove Living Shoreline Design Project, which will potentially provide us with 9 impervious acres treated. We are starting to engage with Greenvest on the design of the SPCA Stream Restoration and Living Shoreline Project. That could give us a lot of credit. And then the Truxton Heights Southwood projects are green and gray infrastructure projects, and will likely get credits out of those projects as well. So as you can see, we are doing very well. So this is really exciting.
So I think it's an important point to emphasize. So the 5 acres of treatment you have there under the first bullet, current restoration requirement. Can you just clarify for the committee that that's a goal coming from MDE as far as the treatment requirement?
That is a goal that is outlined in the permit, that we collect all the data and provide it to MDE. So right now we just wrapped up. That's why I say it's hot off the presses, is because we're working on the annual report where we'll provide that information to MDE.
But I'm just want to clarify for everybody here to make sure they understand that requirements from the MS4 permit.
Yes.
We get from the state.
Yes.
And so the state's saying we need to treat remaining 5 acres, or is that total 5 acres?
That is remaining. No, the total's above 200, closer to 300.
So we have 5 acres to go. So I think I just want to emphasize that's really good. And we have all these other, and what's the deadline for us meeting the target?
So the end of the permit is 2023. What MDE wants is projects designed by then, constructed by 2025. But we will very likely have that 5 by 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. And The Cedar Ridge, I'm going to ask about because that's in Ward 7. So they're converting looking to convert one of their alleyways, which is what, currently paved with asphalt or something?
Yeah, it's some, I believe, micro bioretention to create some green alleys. They already have one in place, so it's an expansion of that.
Good. And glad to see that SPCA project is on there as a possible next step. The Hawkins Cove, I actually just had somebody asking about this recently. So this is just a living shoreline right now. Is it including water access?
That's a good question.
No,
Is that dependent on
it does
dredging?
not, but we plan to address that in the future. So you're talking about dredging. So that's what's going to require is dredging, and so we're looking at that in the future. But this is just the living shoreline.
Okay. All right, so possible next future project. Okay.
Right.
So I also, just the last bullet there is I am going to work on developing a priority project matrix to even look further out on projects that we'll want to start implementing. So
So another question on that, the Hawkins, is that something we are doing partnering with Spa Creek, or is this independent of their efforts out there?
So the Hawkins Cove project is independent of Spot Creek, but it ties into work that the Spot Creek Conservancy already performed there. I believe in 2019, they put in an RSC system upstream, very close to the cove, and they also put in some bioswales right next to the water. So this project will tie into those bioswales and make the connection to the RSC system. So it'll all tie together. And Spot Creek Conservancy does support the project and would like to be involved.
Could someone share, I don't know what stage it is. Is there a design we could look at? The committee could look at? Concept or design or anything?
Yeah, there's a concept design that the city submitted with their application, and that has not changed yet. I mean, it's going to be, we think that's what it's going to look like. We can't imagine it changing much more than that because we did 2 full separate public outreach sessions. There were multiple sessions each time we did these outreach kind of activities, and it didn't change from the first to the second really with what the citizens were concerned about, what they wanted, and what their needs were there. And it was a living shoreline design with access to launch canoes, kayaks, paddle boards, kayak rack down there, some passive enjoyment type of structures such as picnic tables and benches. And then they also wanted better trail connections over to Truxton, which may be done with future funding and also other funding that the Department of Planning and Zoning has put in for funding through NIFWIF. They put in a grant for about $400,000 for improvements in construction on the land side of things. We're talking the Chesapeake Bay Trust funding we have for what we refer to as the Hawkins Cove project is really for the living shoreline.
Okay. All right. Can you share a design with us or concept?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Yes.
And I've had a couple of discussions with the mayor on this. The only thing I will say is we better make sure that all of the city is singing from the same hymnal. I heard a report at the Maritime Advisory Board that sounded kind of negative regarding DNR and the Hawkins Cove plans. So you might want to coordinate with the mayor. And
I have followed up with DNR. And in fact, I met with DNR before the Department of Public Works and the Harbor Master's Office put in a grant application for street end parks and dredging, and including Hawkins Cove in that grant, the Waterway Improvement Program grant funding. And I met with DNR and talked to them about the dredging and explained the tie-in to Hawkins Cove and the Hacka properties and other areas of the city, and taxi service to Hawkins Cove, and that we were talking about just dredging a channel, not the entire cove. And we were encouraged to apply. After I explained it a bit, they saw the benefit in the program. I have since followed the application for the Waterway Improvement Funds, which would be the dredging, was submitted last Friday, and I have since followed up with DNR again. And
Who did you talk to?
I spoke with Matt Fleming, who's the director of the Coastal Waterways Program. And then he will follow up with staff, other staff that looks at the grants that are submitted, the grant applications, that is. And he said he can paint a broader picture for them and in more detail, because the grant application only allows you to say so much, and then we can attach various things. But it's a pretty sparse application as far as what questions they ask and how much room you have for your narrative.
Okay, I would not claim to have full understanding of all of this, but I can just say you might want to look at Tuesday's Maritime Advisory Board report. A person with a different Fleming name.
Carla Fleming. No, I'm aware of Carla Fleming's comments, and
Okay.
I was assured that Matt Fleming would coordinate with Carla Fleming's office on this.
Excellent.
And I have followed up with both Mike Rosberg from Department of Public Works, who submitted the application, and with Beth Bellis.
Excellent. You're way ahead of the game.
We try to be.
So thank you. I think hopefully I've shown that we're making great progress, and we'll continue to make more with that. And thank you for this opportunity. Do you have any more questions?
Any questions from the, all right, Alderman Rennet?
Just the big one I usually do. Can we get a copy of these slides?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and I think it would be good to I think get some of this posted on the website. Might be nice in some fashion, especially where we can kind of a champion and talk about how we're close we are to meeting our goals. And I think we'll be, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how we compare to some of the other municipalities and even counties as far as how much, I mean, hopefully we'll be on track. It looks like to even exceed our goals. And also some of the other improvements, program improvements, I think will be good. If there's a, you know, I could pull out one of the slides and share that with our constituents, and I think that'd be good to do. Let's see. So for the environmental compliance inspector positions, are those going to be, I guess, sharing the same responsibilities? I think at one time there was talk about having one focusing more on some of the B&P inspections. Are they both going to kind of be doing the same?
Betsy, you want
Or is that to be determined
to
still?
address that, since they're going to be here, working into your...
To answer your question, I think yes to both of those. I think initially the onboarding process, we're going to have to get this new staff person up to speed on everything. He comes to us with a great amount of experience and knowledge, so I don't anticipate that taking too long. And once that's completed, then yes, we'll look at other areas that our inspectors can help us out with.
Okay. And so right now it's fully staffed, the 2 stormwater engineers.
As of next Thursday, yes.
Excellent. So regarding some of the projects, so are we still utilizing that list of projects that I think it was AECOM created, what was it, 3-4 years ago, where they looked at some of the, I think it was particular to the BMPs, as far as improvements we could make to them. Is that still being used as a guidance document? And do you know if they looked at Hacka property when they looked at opportunities?
So when Greenvest came on board, we gave them the AECOM list to serve as their starting point. Mm-hmm. And then they did their own survey of both Spot Creek and Back Creek and developed their own priority list. And at that time, we decided to focus on Back Creek. So that's why we've had the SBCA, Timber Creek, and Ambridge focus for a few years. That was as a result of that. So I don't think we're using that AECOM. We're using the Greenvest priorities now.
Okay. And so for the Housing Authority property, presumably they're in charge of maintaining those structures. Have we spoken to them about any kind of retrofit potential? I'm just wondering if their properties were looked at as far as potential. improvements?
I don't know the answer to that. I know during the redevelopment of Newtown 20 that they had to meet all of the normals. They didn't have stormwater management at all there, and so now they do in the new development.
Right.
But I don't know that we're going back and asking them to do retrofits other than the redevelopment that's coming up for each of the properties.
Okay. Because I know it came up, there was a complaint about flooding water at one of the properties, and I think it was...
That was addressed. We added a new inlet, and that took care of that problem.
But in terms of responsibility, I think it was kind of split, right, in terms of who's responsible for the inlets and the pipes. And
Yeah, I think that was actually the city's. It turned out to be the city's responsibility because it was a city street and it was also the city's storm drain system. So we added the inlet to resolve that.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee?
Just thank you. Seems encouraging. Can we get the Green Vest update of the ACOM list? Is that something that we can share?
We can show you what they prepared. They look, as I said, both on the Spot Creek side and the Back Creek, and what the costs were going to be, and that's when we decided to focus based on the credits that we could get on the Back Creek projects. But we can provide that information.
Are they still under contract with
They
us,
are.
or is that done?
They're very active parts of our team.
Okay, all right.
They are.
Yeah, that would be good to see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious if they've, for example, done an inventory of all of our stormwater outfalls as far as prioritizing them for repair and how much erosion there is at each of them. Have they done something like that?
They've done the inventory, but they haven't done the prioritization.
Okay.
So that's what I would like to work on next. I will likely go with a different firm for that.
Okay. And this is going to come up when plan and zoning gets their turn to talk about the development issues, but, or updates, I should say. But Parole Place is a large development out in Ward 3, and I saw on the plans that they have a severely eroded outfall, and they're proposing to put 2 new outfalls in the same area with, I think what they were calling for in the plan were, frankly, kind of antiquated, I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but antiquated technique, which is just creating a gabion basket plunge pool, I think they were calling it. But I'm just wondering if there's a way to, I think that's pretty early in the process. I'm not even sure if Public Works has had a chance to look at that yet. But that might be a good opportunity to work with the developer whenever it becomes appropriate. Because that kind of makes me, I don't know, I'd like to learn more about that just in light of that comment that was all in there as far as eroding outfall. And I'd hate to see that get worse. And I think that might be a good opportunity to include some new restoration technology or find some other partnership we could do. But I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, we can mention that to our stormwater engineer since, they review those plans, review and approve those plans, so we'll mention it to them.
Yeah, because and I was going to mention this to Director of the Place, but also I noticed in the plans they're calling for, so with this 2 new outfalls, they're going to be creating, basically creating a new easement clearing just to lay the pipe down the steep slope. And that might be an opportunity if they're already going to be clearing, maybe put in some kind of SPSC, the step pool stormwater conveyance system or something similar where we might be able to get more credit out of that. And it's something that might be a little better for the stream.
Okay.
Right.
I'll talk to the stormwater engineers about that.
Okay. Thank you. So thanks again for your time and for the presentation. And again, congratulations.
Thank you.
on the promotion. All right. Next up on the agenda, I think we have plan and zoning. Would you be able to come up? Director J, are you, I guess, Lisa, you're going to be giving an update on the... Okay. Actually, if you're able to stay, we can do it after Director of the Place.
Yeah,
Chair, I don't think I'm going to be very long, so
Okay.
if that helps you with your logistics.
You're going to jinx yourself there.
I know. In a minute, you'll see what I mean. Should I-
Oh, go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you.
Give the update.
Chair, members of the committee, I guess it was at last month's meeting, we were, the planning and zoning staff there was a request from you to bring back the monthly projects and development report, which we've done. We've been working very hard on that. Tom Smith is the point person on it. He's worked very hard, working with other staff to pull together information. We emailed out the report to you earlier this week. I have a printed one in front of me, but we didn't want to waste paper, so we were going via email. Tom had expected to be here, but he couldn't. He had a conflict. So in meetings in the future, we'll make sure staff is here, such as Tom or other development review staff. So if you have any immediate questions, as you go through the report, if you have any specific questions about different projects, feel free to email him directly or go through me. I certainly will make sure you get the answer. The reason why I was thinking that I won't be long today is that I don't have the familiarity with the different projects that the development review staff has. So I won't be able to do justice probably to your specific questions, but we'll certainly get an answer, to you right away. We're also going to put it on the website, so it'll be constantly updated. It won't be just updated once a month. As soon as we have new information, we'll just be constantly updating the report.
Okay. Or do you have any specific update, or do you want us to just let you know what our questions are?
Right. I really don't have a specific one. I really probably couldn't do it justice since I'm a little step away from.
Well, I do have a few, but I'd like to open up my colleagues. Or are you still bringing it up?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just start. Did you something ready?
Well, I don't find the email, and I do find it helpful to have it as an attachment to our agenda, because that's usually where I read it. So clearly, I don't have any questions because I don't know what the update was.
Alderman, you didn't receive the email? I sent it out, I think, Tuesday.
I can't find it. but-
Okay, well, we can do that. We'll try to get it out a little earlier in the month so that you have it as part of your committee, you mean your committee agenda for this committee meeting, right? Correct?
All right, I'm going to try to find the email.
So-
I Googled, I searched under Tom Smith and it came up.
Came up, okay.
Cynthia, do you have that handy that you could?
It might have come out under my name as well, because I
I'll email
forwarded
you
it.
the link, actually, if you want to.
Alderman Arnett, if you're searching for Tom Smith, it's ETS.
Pardon me?
It's ETS at Annapolis.gov.
Okay. I'm trying to find.
I just put Tom Smith in and searched and it came right up.
I'll email you.
find this.
I'll email you the link. Oops, if I can find my email.
Does the committee, I would assume that the environmental committee preferred us to email it. We can certainly make paper copies available if that's what you'd like.
I'll leave that up to my colleagues. Would you like a printed version in the future?
No, but if it was an attachment to the agenda, that would be.
We can also, I can talk to Tom about having it ready earlier in the month, each month, if that just seems to be better for preparation for meetings and hearings.
Well, I'll get started. I just emailed both of you the link. Hopefully that'll work for you. But I did have a couple questions. First of all, and again, if you don't know, I understand, but I guess if you could
Well, I'll take
email-
notes and get you the
Thank you.
answers.
First of all, is the Hudson Street, and maybe actually Director Gerald would know this, but the Hudson Street, the new Public Works building, just kind of curious about how that's going as far as construction, when that might get, I mean, I guess that's probably more appropriate for Public Works.
Yeah, I basically have no information on that.
So that project's moving along well. The opening date is scheduled for January 23rd for us that building to be available for us to occupy. So they're making great progress. They're having, as with all construction projects, some equipment issues, namely with the transformer. The transformers seem to be in short supply. But we're working through that. But yeah, January 23rd is the magic date. So we're going to have a ribbon cutting. We'll schedule that as we get closer so we can invite everybody out to see the new facility.
Can we get a tour of the
That
building, but also-
will include a tour.
Do you think there'll be access to look at some of the stormwater management
Sure.
as well?
We can do that. It'll be January.
That's
But
Maybe we'll save that then for the spring. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Director Cheryl. Let's see. Another question I had was Bay Village Phase 2, which is independent living facility, I think, in my ward.
I'm sorry, what was the first word? What village?
Bay Village? It's Phase 2, Bay Village. It was mentioned in the sheet that it's being amended. The application's being amended, so I was just, if you could give me details about how that's getting amended, so I'm aware. Thomas Woods, I'm curious if that, because that's all, actually, I'm trying to think if that's in my ward or right on the edge of it, but.
What number is that?
Oh, it should be under Thomas. I'm not sure. The number would be, I don't have a number.
Chair,
on
you
mine.
want the status of Thomas Woods?
Yeah, the status of Thomas. It's been sitting kind of inactive for a while. I know they were at one point trying to put, originally trying to put townhomes and then tried to put daycare, and that got kind of, wasn't feasible. So then I think they went back to townhomes, but it's just been kind of sitting vacant, inactive for a while. Parole place I already mentioned, but and maybe I'll just reach out to have a call with yourself and Mr. Smith. Because I noticed on the sheet it said that the forest conservation plan is being reviewed.
Right.
And I saw that it was mentioned that they needed to go back and get, I think because it's been more than 5 years, that they have to get actually a new plan. So my one question with that would be, because it's not too old of a permit, but I think it dates to 2017 or so, are they complying with our most recent forest conservation regulations and also stormwater management?
Okay.
And I think the answer is yes, but I just wanted to confirm that. And for those, and maybe we could have a deep dive on that project at some point, but I'm glad to see that there's effort to put structured parking on the property to help reduce the footprint. There are a lot of steep slopes surrounding that property as well. And it sounded like, from what I saw in Track It, that Plan and Zoning is trying to get them to pull back in some areas away from the slope and to protect some of the larger significant trees, which are 24 inches and over.
That's correct. The developer seems very agreeable to do that, to make the footprint as small as possible on the site to preserve the good trees that are there. And also there's a very aggressive plan to get rid of invasive species and to kind of, restore native species to the site. So that's all part of the project.
Yeah, I know there are a significant amount of invasive
Yeah, it's pretty
species out there.
impressive, the scope on that site of what needs to be, to cleaned up.
The other thing I'd like some more information on would be, I noticed that adjacent to that project is actually former Alderwoman Classy Hoyle, I think, property. But it looked like that was now incorporated into the overall design, where they're putting some, I guess, additional homes there.
Right.
So I'm just kind of curious how that plays into it, and presumably that's why you're asking for a revision to some of their forest conservation documents. And
Right, that was reviewed at the commission meeting.
Related to that, I'm also would like to know overall how many MPDUs will be included on this project.
Are you talking about the Athens?
Parole place. Yeah. And that's, I think those are all the questions I had. Do you want to go now? Okay, Alderwoman Mason?
Thank you. Mr. Laplace, I'm looking at the chart. I'd really like, I know we want to save paper, but could I have a paper copy? Because it's hard to look all the way across at everything. It's a lot.
I agree with you.
And I'm jealous
Can't
that
argue
you
that.
have that. Yes.
Can't argue that.
My question is about the willows at Forest Drive. There were a couple of representatives at our meeting on Monday night, for some reason, with an expectation that there would be a discussion about the road. And in talking to them, they said the road could go and simply start at Newtown Drive and end at the end of the Willows property. And that sounded very strange, and maybe Director Gerald can help us with this also. What is going on?
Boy, I'm glad
You're
he's here.
laughing, so
So it sounds a little bit strange to me too, but clearly for Willows to move forward, they have to have the road on their property and then cross the American Legion property. So I guess conceivably it could just run there. Providence Point has every intention to build the road on their property. They're re-upping the agreement they have with the American Legion that expired. So everything is moving forward the way we had anticipated. Probably the last step is we need to add to our CIP next year to build the road on the or to have funds to pay for the road across the American Legion property. So that's our part of it. But Willows is paying for it across theirs, and then the little piece that's next to Newtown Drive, we're paying for it across the American Legion, and then Providence Point, of course, has it across their property. So there's a four-way MOA that's being routed that sort of memorializes that. So that's in process, but everybody has agreed that those are the steps and the responsibilities for the road.
So our section of it is not in the CIP for this year, so nothing's going to happen until next year.
Well, and it doesn't need to happen this year.
Okay.
That timing will work out. We plan to put it in the CIP for FY24, and that will be timely for the development.
Well, do they realize that? I'm sorry.
They do. We've had meetings with them and we've discussed that, and we've talked in detail about the MOA that's being routed for everybody to basically sign up to these agreements.
Okay.
So they're aware of it.
Thank you.
Alderwoman, just to add to the discussion of the Willows, I had a discussion with the lead of the development team, and he's wanted me to know that he is taking a lot of the comments from our last work session, the Planning Commission work session, from both the commission members and staff, and incorporating that into a revised design, which they're working on right now, which will affect the design of the buildings, open space. If you watched the meeting, there was a lot of talk about green space and where it should happen, and versus where parking is and things like that, and access to the site. So they are scheduled to come back for a continuation of the work session on October 6th, and we'll be looking at revised plans at that meeting. Just wanted you to know that the work is going on pretty much on a daily basis. The discussion back and forth is happening.
Thank you.
Alderman Arnett?
Thank you. If I could follow up on that, and I do have a question about another project, but I know they're up against a tight deadline because of their grants. Are they still going to be, I mean, we want affordable housing, we all do. So are they still going to be okay in terms of meeting their deadlines for their money?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I thought there already had been a second meeting, and that I had missed it, but I guess.
Yes, this will be a third. October
A third.
6th will be the third work
So
session.
did the second meeting go better than the first?
Well, I think it was constructive. I mean, I think,
Okay.
they heard the community. I think the community heard some of the concerns and frustrations of the developer. So, yeah, I think it was useful.
Okay, I have two questions. One is on Rocky Gorge, now called something else, but Athens. Are we going to be able to, I know Alderwoman Finlayson said that in her meeting with the developer, it was a very favorable meeting, but I think that the discussion was about having a road crossing Aristide Allen at Godspeed Way, but I think they needed to get another piece of property which does have some trees on it that I think are going to be forest conservation issues. Do you know where we are in terms of that?
The last time that staff had communication with the developer, they were going to explore those options for adjoining property acquisition as well as discussions with the state in terms of the street, the highway. So I know that's happening right now. We don't have anything to report at this time, but they understand they need to do that. So
Okay.
that work's being done.
It is controversial in the community. In fact, some of the people I know and love dearly are very opposed to that cross street, but it just seems for the sanity of Oxford Landing, and also I think slowing down the outrageously fast traffic on Aristide Allen, that from my perspective, that would be a very good outcome. So if you need any support from us, I'm certainly willing to put my shoulder to the wheel.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Alderman.
we had a meeting, a week ago, Mr. Laplace, with the developer. And they're not working on crossing Aris Allen Boulevard. They're only working on getting an entrance from their property.
Right in, right out?
Right in, right out,
That
but
was-
not going all the way across. And there are no long-range plans, there should be, I believe, because what's the name of the project that's coming in on the other side on the westbound side of Aris Allen
On
Boulevard at
Godspeed.
Godspeed Way?
Right.
So if we were really thinking and planning ahead, we would be looking at that as an intersection. But right now, Athens and Annapolis, or whatever their title is only looking at right in, right out for their development. And the first meeting we had was a wonderful meeting. Mr. City Manager Gerald was with us for that meeting, and 2 days later, we discovered that they already had a website up, they were advertising the sale of the properties and the like, and our person who handles MPDUs was not even aware. So there's a lot of things that still have to happen before they can sell at least their MPDU units. But anyway, the discussion was not about crossing Aris Allen Boulevard, crossing the median, but only a right in, right out to the property. So we still have a big hurdle ahead of us because there's been no discussion about Oxford Landing and the impact that traffic will have on Y'all Road.
But
No, that's-
State Highway Administration has already said no to right in, right out.
No, that's not true. They did, but they didn't. They did, looking at the original entrance, which is a paved area. But the second time we went to them for permission, we moved the entrance further up Aris Allen Boulevard so that there would be a longer distance to get to the light at Chinquapin. The first location was a very short distance, and I don't remember how far. But the second option was an entrance that was much further up, that would give traffic an opportunity to turn right and to cross 2 lanes of traffic to get to the light at Chinquapin and make a U-turn and leave town.
How aware are the Annapolis Neck and Greg Walker and all of those people that opposed the right in, right out the last time? Do they know that this is being discussed?
I have no clue.
Well, I know that my office has received several letters from residents in the immediate area that are in opposition of having access from the boulevard. So both sides of the issue we've heard from.
Well, we have received at least 2 or 3 letters from folks who live on Vineyard Lane
Oh, yeah.
who don't want the right in, right out onto Aris Allen
Could that
either.
be a land use attorney?
Yeah, so, we're getting it from both sides. But I think to answer your question, if they've been notified, I doubt it, but there was a big article in the newspaper about it, so they are, I'm sure, well aware.
Will there
of
be a
what's
public
being
hearing?
planned.
It's not required since it's an approved site plan, but I mean, I think the developer seemed agreeable to having public sessions. Certainly, didn't the developer agree to have one with the immediate neighborhood? So we could certainly push for that.
Well, actually, the next meeting we're supposed to have
Oh, right, with the
is
leadership.
supposed to be with the leadership
Correct.
from Oxford Landing and Bywater before we open it to the community at large.
Right.
With the hopes that we would have some negotiations going on in the interim to solve some of these problems. But right now, we're waiting.
Not my ward, so I'm not going to go any further, but I think that there will be a lot of input from the public, whether it's asked for or not. The one that is in my ward,
Alderman, I had some other questions on that project.
Oh, sure.
I'll give it to you right after Rocky Gorge. So just since we're on that project, my wife actually grew up right next to that in Bywater, and I used to play in that forest that it loops around behind Oxford Landing and where Rocky Gorge is now. And I know people historically have biked and dirt biked in there because there were a number of trails long before, I think, any development over there. I had asked, so I say that because I'm kind of, what I'm getting at is I'm concerned about the health of that forest since it was impacted by the tornado. I think I brought up the idea, I think our last meeting in July, or after the meeting, I can't remember. But in any case, has anybody from planning and zoning gone out to look to see if the forest has changed from what was originally approved? Because again, it was, as we talked about last time, it was approved, I think, more than 5 years ago. So has anybody gone out there to look to see if the forest conservation plan either needs to get revoked or at least revised to include the impacts that have happened from the tornado? Because
Yes, field study has been done. I thought there was a report that came back to you, I recall.
to me,
I'll talk about back to you, but I'll check.
I know he did on Griscom Square,
Right.
and he may have sent me on Rocky Gorge. But if not, I'll have to look for it. But I'd like to see that reassessed because, again, I haven't seen it, but
Sorry.
I haven't seen it in a while. But I know what the forest used to look like, and just looking at some of the aerials and drive-bys, it looks like a lot of trees have been blown over. In my understanding, and I know we're a bit we're not clear on which of us is right as far as my understanding was that the forest to the, I guess that'd be to the west, down in the gorge, was part of this project. It's not being developed, but I think it was a part of the project, at least for the forest conservation plan. And I'm bringing that up because if it is a part of the overall project, I think it'd be good for them to go and see if they need to do, the city to see if they need to revise their plans to see if any kind of additional forest management needs to get done. Because if no forest management's done, then they're going to get a lot of invasive species that come up there. And I know a lot of the trails are most likely blocked by fallen trees. So there could be some good improvements for the community that could be done as far as reconnecting the trails.
Okay,
and making
I'll have
sure
him
that there's
get
gonna
back to
be
you on that.
healthy regeneration of the forest. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, may I ask
Yes.
a follow-up question? What qualifies it to continue to be a forest, considering the fact that the tornado went through? And there's a lot, and I don't know what the planning department has done as far as evaluating the status of the forest, I guess is how to put it. Because much of it is not intact as far as trees are concerned. I think there is a conservation area that is part of this property, but I don't believe it's being impacted by the development part.
Right.
You know, the part that's already been cleared. But I think we need to look at that area to determine the status of it.
Yeah.
We'll check on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Alderman Arnett.
thank you. And if I can make a request, first of all, besides the chair, I think other members of this committee would like to receive those emails, but I suspect that Alderwoman Pendle Charles at a minimum. So I'm wondering if when you send these information emails, if they could really go to all of the council members.
I sent the report to the entire council, mayor and
Okay,
council.
thank you.
We'll continue to do that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Or maybe I don't appreciate it because I didn't actually pay attention to it. So
Might be in your spam file. I find a lot of things are going into my spam file for some reason. I don't know why.
the project I'm interested in is the long-delayed lofts at Eastport Landing. And I'm really not clear. I know it's been back and forth to the court on adequate public facilities. I think it was remanded back to the Board of Appeals. And I don't know, have they come back and are they working with the planning?
Is this the shopping center project?
Yes, it is.
We're working right now, those items that are outstanding that the court wanted us to get more information about, we're working on that with the developer. For instance, there's a traffic study being done right now. We had to wait till after Labor Day, till schools were back in session.
Right.
Because obviously the summertime isn't the time to do that. And we're also trying to help get the information that's needed from the police department. So that's actively being worked on.
So to the extent possible, I would certainly appreciate at least being informed, if not involved, in the discussions. I think there were 3 APFs. One
Yes.
was the transportation, one was the security, and one was the stormwater management. I do think there are solutions. I think there's solutions that are winners for everybody involved. In fact, I was just talking about the multimodal transit system there with someone at transportation this morning. I think it could be more robust than it is in the plan currently, and again, could be a win-win-win. And I think this also could touch on the Choice Neighborhood Program and be thinking about when we're hoping to expand from Eastport Terrace Harbor House. And then clearly the scouring of the creek that goes into Jones Cove. So, yeah, it would be nice to get that resolved and moving. I think everybody would like that. So I would certainly like to know more about what the current dialogue is, but also if there's anything I can do to help.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
I wasn't so sure, was it?
Chair was right.
Thank you, Director, for your
All right.
time.
Thank you all.
Public Works, would you be able to come back up and talk about the, was the city dock pump?
So good afternoon, David Gerald, Director of Public Works, Lisa Greco, Civil Engineer with Public Works, and David Mandel, the Deputy Director of OEM. So I will just briefly say that we're here to talk about the Compromise Street Flood Mitigation Project. This has been probably top 3 priority project for the city for a number of years. Lisa's going to talk a little bit about how we got to this point, but recently we put it out for bids, and unfortunately we, due to the bidding climate and other things, we had a bid, what we call a bid bust. We only got one bid, and it was much, much higher than what the city's cost estimate and available funds are. So we're regrouping on that, but we just wanted to give you an update. So Lisa's going to talk about sort of the background and how we got here. Dave Mandel is going to talk about the funding situation and his discussions about extending the grant funding. And then I'll talk about sort of what our plan is going forward for the project. So Lisa.
Good afternoon. This project, the Stormwater and Flood Mitigation Project at City Dock, has been around since 2017. AECOM is the design engineer on it. They took the first 18 months developing a concept for the project that includes a pump station, an underground wet well, an above-ground control building, and a bulkhead at the end of Newman Street. Actually, that concept was to be applied to both the north side, Dock Street side, and Compromise Street side. Initially, 2 pump stations were envisioned. Our grant application with FEMA required that they wanted one project that could be completed with their grant funding. So the project was rescoped to just address the flooding on the south side or compromised street side. There were several other decisions and iterations. We were looking to be efficient and house both control buildings within one building on the south side, but we had difficulty siting that building. It became too large in mass and we couldn't get it past HPC. So then we just dropped back to having the individual one pump station for the south side. We've had other scope additions. We had a splash pad considered at one point, and then that was changed. We have a bioretention pond instead to address stormwater management, and also a portion of the site that was identified for this project, the Newman Street Park. A portion of that plat was given to the Guardians of the First Amendment Memorial, which has been constructed. So in the interim years, we've had, because that site is an archaeological site, a designated archaeological site, there's been a lot of archaeological requirements, also requirements as part of the FEMA grant. So we've gone through various phases of reviews of the historic significance of the site, and then some non-invasive and invasive test pitting to really localize where we needed to look for archaeological artifacts. And then as part of the FEMA grant, we had to negotiate an archaeological data recovery plan and actually implement it in order for the memorial to proceed with its construction. So all of that work, all the archaeological work has been completed, and the final report for that should be out at the end of this year. We continue to proceed with the plans. The 100% construction documents were completed earlier this year, and we put the project out to bid in April. We initially had bids due in June, but from feedback that we were getting from various potential bidders, there was concerns with a lot of the utilities. We were trying to, changed the plan slightly to accommodate that. We are planning and are going to continue to move forward with some utility relocations, the sanitary and water line in the intersection, to be done by city contractors that are currently working in the area. And this would be in advance of the flood mitigation project. We were trying to coordinate that. And we're also coordinating with BG&E to underground some of the overhead lines to facilitate construction in the area, because a lot of the feedback we're getting is a very tight, compact area, not a lot of laydown space or area to work in. So as Director Jarrell mentioned, we had put it out to bid. We ultimately received, the bids came in July, and we only had one bidder. We did have a pre-bid meeting. There was it was well attended. There seemed to be a lot of interest, and we spent a lot of time answering a lot of technical questions. So we extended the bid period to allow for that. But in the end, we only had one bidder. It was Archer Western, and that came in at $22.7 million. The engineer's estimate, which was at $9.5 million, and current funding available was $10 million. So we opted not to award it.
Okay. And so the plan now, I guess, would be to re-advertise it?
Yeah, so Dave's going to talk about the grants that we have, and we've reached out to the grantors about extending the grant periods.
Okay, I can get into that. Thank you, Director. Lisa. Good afternoon, Council. Great to be here with you. In terms of the grants picture for this project, we were awarded grants from two different agencies, the Maryland Department of the Environment's Comprehensive Flood Management Grant Program, and they awarded us $3.1 million over 3 different years, 3 consecutive years. We also received just shy of $3.4 million. It's like $3,389,000 from FEMA through their hazard mitigation grant program. So that's about 6.5, just under 6.5 total in state and federal grants for this project. Been going on a long time. after the bid bust, we went back to them to explain and kind of look for guidance in terms of their next steps, just so they'd understand. FEMA and the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, MDEM, great to work with. They're understanding, they're receptive. They recognize that this grant took long enough for them to review and award to us in the first place, that they're going to be agreeable and forgiving with an additional extension. So I spoke to them last week, and we have to, send a letter explaining the circumstances and request 18 to 24 months. They don't see any difficulty in receiving that extension on the FEMA side. MDE's actually had a lot more rigid requirements in terms of notifications and documentation all throughout. It's been very interesting, but they were just as receptive. They understand that these things happen. They just need everything in writing. So the bottom line for the existing grants is we don't appear to be in jeopardy of losing any grants in terms of the $6.5 million from this bid bust and the unexpected delay. That's the kind of the quick news and the good news. Kind of the next question is, do we need more money? And how are we going to go for that? And I did speak to FEMA about that, and they invited us to apply for more funds. As long as it is we can break it down into an independent project, as we know how FEMA rules are, as Lisa mentioned. So there are some things we sort of have to work out and decide what our approach is going to be. But the bottom line is our current grants are in place and holding for the moment, and there is a possibility of receiving more in the future.
And so it's currently about $6 million in grant funds, but what was the engineer's estimate?
9.5.
Okay, so there's still, yeah. And
Yes, so the path forward is that I've reached out to AMRP, our team for the other side of City Dock, because there are some potential synergies and sort of improved coordination issues if we have them do the project. The City Dock project, AMRP, wraps all the way around to Donner Park, so it reaches over to the south side of City Dock. So they are non-committal, but they've indicated some interest in potentially doing this project. So we just sent them a letter asking for them to put together a proposal for us to do three things. One is to do some project planning and see if they could incorporate it into the construction that they're already doing for the other side of City Dock. And then to break apart the project into all the bid items, and then to prepare a cost estimate. So we may end up, normally, we have our design engineer do that, and we had AECOM, who's the design engineer for the south side, do that for us, and that was the $9.5 million estimate. We need a sanity check on that, and so AMRP may be doing that, but they may charge us to do that. So if that doesn't work out, then we will have a little bit of a cooling off period. We'll wait until the winter time, and then we'll put it back out for bids. One of the things that we heard from the other potential bidders is that the Naval Academy had a big seawall project that was out for bids at the same time. So they felt like they had to choose one or the other. The Naval Academy job was bigger, and it was more fully funded than what ours was. So it appears that they opted to bid on that instead of bidding on our project, except for Archer Western. Archer Western is a national firm with a very good reputation. So it's not like they were some fly-by-night company that just threw out a bid. They're a well-known company. But we were somewhat shocked by the $22 million bid. Yeah. So that's what our plan is going forward, is if it doesn't work out with AMRP, and again, I see a lot of benefits to having it added to their scope of work as far as overall coordination of the project. But if that doesn't work out, then we'll wait a few months and then put it out for bids again.
Any questions from the committee?
Yes, I guess I was going to ask, and I think the director just touched on separating it out into smaller jobs or projects, I guess. I thought I heard Mr. Mandel say that we were getting $3 million over 3 years.
The Maryland Department of the Environment funds have all been awarded to us. They awarded $3.1 million over 3 years combined. Like that's already in the past.
Okay.
The money has been awarded. It's all these grants are reimbursable. So I don't want to say the money is in our hands, but all the funds have been awarded to us, all 3.1 million. So we have 6.5 thereabouts in grant funds that have been awarded for the project.
Okay, so it wasn't 3 million a year. It was just over 3 years.
Over 3 years, correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, in total, it was 3.1 from the Maryland Department of the Environment. Yes.
Okay, so I kind of misunderstood that, and that's why I was saying if we could have divided it up over 3 years, then we'd have some additional funding, but,
That would have been something.
Yeah.
Sorry to mislead.
so that's okay. No, it's my hearing, not your speaking. Thank you.
Yes, so another reason for waiting a little bit is maybe we'll have a different governor and maybe we can appeal to that person about not getting their feet wet down at City Dock. So, but it is shocking that, order of magnitude higher cost. Wow.
And I think that's a very important point because, the dirty little secret out there is we can do the other side, we can do the Dock Street side, but if we don't do the Compromise Street side, it's all for naught.
Yeah.
Right? So the storm drains would still be the same and the water would still come up through the storm drain system and flood the streets. And so, the water, as I always say, the water doesn't care where it comes up. It's going to come up wherever it can. So,
But is that sort of sideways good news that the Academy is proceeding with their seawall? So even if we raise City Dock, they're going to be able to.
Yeah, they're doing the back part all the way back by where their sailing center is because it's failing. They've had to close half of the road back there because they have sinkholes.
Right.
So that's the part that they're addressing. But they have a very well-defined plan. Lisa and I have been briefed on it several times, and it's over a longer period of time than what we're anticipating for ours, but they do have a good plan.
Are we still working with Sarah Phillips?
We are. Lisa and I are both still on that committee, and it's a very productive and very valuable
Yeah, she's
committee.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, my question was kind of in line with Alderman Arnett's, because I remember the last plans I saw were for a pump on either side. And I guess, because I remember there was huge ductile iron pipes being proposed for both sides, pump on either one. But now there's one pump on the south side that's being proposed, and would that dewater? You're saying it's not going to dewater the north side?
Correct. It's only on the south side. So the south side project, there is a wet well proposed, and this is oversized, so we only have to dig it once, and it's can store a 100-year storm. That would be under the current plaza area. There's actually 3 pumps in the wet well, 3 100-horsepower pumps, and 3 individual discharge pipes that go out under Newman Street through a bulkhead. And because the bulkhead is failing, it's a wood bulkhead, we need a more robust bulkhead to support the pipes as well as to build up a seawall, because on the south side on Compromise Street, we not only get it coming up through the storm drain, it comes over the top of the street. The top of the bulkhead is flush with the street. So that's the difference between that and the north side. And then in addition, there's a control building to house all the electrical that run the pumps, and there's also an emergency backup generator that's housed or screened in that building as well. And then the storm pipes themselves in Compromise Street between St. Mary's and Memorial Circle all have to be reconstructed and realigned to flow to the wet well and then be discharged overboard. So as one of the rescopes that we did, we had an interim estimate come in at 90%. And for that whole project, as just described, was $13.5 million. That was in 2019. So we did not have the funding. We then decided to keep the same scope, but have 2 construction phases. And the minimal amount that has to be built together is the wet well, the discharge pipes through the bulkhead and the control building. And then the remaining realignment of the storm drain system outside of the immediate intersection would be a second construction phase. And as Director Jarrell had mentioned, we've been talking with Whiting Turner because it overlaps the realignment in Compromise Street between Memorial Circle and the cutoff point, which is in front of 110 Compromise, overlaps with the revitalization project that's going on, that's being proposed. So it would be appropriate to construct it all at the same time.
For the north side.
For the south side. And
south side, okay.
the north side project will begin on Compromise Street at the Donner parking lot. So that's adjacent to our Phase 2 construction for the south side project. So it would really make sense to do the 2 simultaneously.
So where would, what kind of work is being proposed for the north side with the overall City Dock redevelopment? As far as redirecting that storm drain system, is a pump going to be put in that north side with the City Dock redevelopment?
Yes. So yes, I've been involved for the last year with AMRP providing technical feedback on their designs. And yes, a whole pump station will be constructed as part of the revitalization project.
Yeah, and the wet well and the pumps will be approximately where the Harbor Master building is right now, if you can picture that. We're still discussing whether we want to have an above-ground structure there, because the Harbor Master building is going to be demoed, or to try to move all of that down to the Burtis house property and add space there, and then just run the electrical lines over to by where the Harbor Master building is. But the wet well and the pumps are all underground, so we'd like to just keep that without any structures and move them down by Burtis. So that's an ongoing discussion, but it'll be very similar. All the storm drains are redirected to that single location, and then it'll be pumped out from the wet well.
From the south side?
Yeah. No, on the north side. It'll be similar to on the south side, but just moved over to the other side.
So as far as the alignment on, I guess, Main Street, and for that system coming down, is the normal stormwater outfall going to be through the ductile iron pipes for the wet well, or is that only going to be the overflow outfall?
No. So the outfall from the wet well, those are ductile iron pipes that go through the bulkhead. And then the Main Street storm drain system, the existing Main Street storm drain system is at a higher elevation. That is always been called the bypass system. So that will remain in place as it is. And as part of the project, that line will have a backflow preventer installed so that water in the future, as sea level rise occurs, it will not back up into the storm drain system. They'll line the pipes and make them watertight. So that will continue to outfall right into the corner of Ego Alley as it currently does.
And what's the capacity for the proposed system as far as?
Well, the storm drain
volume
pipes themselves are sized for a 10-year storm. That's the engineering standard. And the wet well has been oversized, as I stated, to have the storage capacity for a 100-year storm.
And how many feet of surge is that equal to? Because I think from what I recall in the past, it was like 5 feet maybe.
The elevation 5 or 5 feet of protection that's been discussed, that has to do with the elevation of the seawall, having a continuous seawall around Ego Alley to elevation 5. So the existing seawalls at the head of Ego Alley are built to that elevation currently. And so the revitalization project on the north side has protection even higher than that. They're looking at an interim to 6.5. They're raising a portion of it, and then overall protection in the future up to elevation 8. On the south side at Compromise Street, the new bulkhead that we would put in would be to elevation 5. we would need to coordinate with the two adjacent private property owners, Fleet Reserve and 110 Compromise, and we have been in ongoing discussions with them. The Fleet Reserve's bulkhead is beyond its useful life. They've actually set aside funds and have been very anxious to partner or coordinate with the city to have their bulkhead done when we build ours. 110 Compromise, they're just recently built out and are not in a position to build a new bulkhead, and their first floor elevation is already at elevation 5 as part of their redevelopment of that property. And so we'll have to have ongoing conversations with them as to how we end our project to provide continuous protection to elevation 5 of Compromise Street.
Okay. All right, so 5 feet. Because I know Isabel was 7 feet, I
6'3".
think, right? 6'3"? Okay. Yeah, so, well, okay, that's good to know. And, all right, I guess that's about my only question. Although I'm also curious for the ductile iron at the wet well outfall. From what I recall, that was around $500,000 just for the pipe, somewhere
it was
around there.
expensive.
I mean, I know there are other issues with using the double wall plastic.
Yeah,
pipe,
yes,
but
we did.
It might be a little cheaper.
Yes, I think, I apologize. We did have them revise the material for a portion of it. So where it comes out of the pumps, it's all ductile iron. But for the length down Newman Street, it's an alternate material, and then it has to be ductile iron passing through the concrete wall.
Okay. Alderman Arnett?
So seems though we're having 10-year storms twice a year now. So that makes the backflow valve even more important, doesn't it?
Yes, yes.
I just have to say, I'm glad you're working on this. It just seems very complicated and it gets more and more expensive all the time. So thank you for what you're doing.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you so much for the report. And I'd like to ask Deputy City Manager Guild, if you'd like to, I know you also have a time deadline. Before we get into legislation, do you have any report you'd like to give us?
Just a few items to update you on. One thing that the Department of Planning and Zoning,
Could you pull the mic closer?
oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
All right, so just a few items to update you on. I have talked with Director Laplace about working on building performance standards for the code to update our building code to be consistent with climate change impacts and building resilience into our code. And so we're part of a White House coalition on building performance standards, and as part of that participation, we agreed that we would have code changes in 2023. So we spoke a couple of months ago, and he'll be tasking his staff with looking at the code and how we build more resilience into our building code. Per the FY23 budget, I was appropriated $65,000 to hire a contractor to help me with the conversion of the city fleet to EV vehicles, as well as looking at our public transit system and electric options for that system. And I'm working on an RFP for that, to hire that person for that position. Now, we're in the final stages of the Military Installation Resilience Review, or the MAR. That is the project that the city is leading with the county and USNA. And we're now identified all critical assets and assessed their vulnerabilities. Presentations were made to city staff and stakeholder groups last week and the week before. Now Stantec, our contractor, is working on selecting a top 10 list of priority projects, and they will develop a concept design for each of them. They'll flesh them out a bit. Their final report will likely be produced in November, and it will have the top 10 projects fleshed out in that final report, and which will also include resilience recommendations. Stantec has under our contract until January to complete the work, but we believe it will be done by late November.
Which project did you say this was for?
This is the Military Installation Resilience Review.
So they're all projects focused around downtown.
Well, not just downtown. We're looking at projects mostly downtown, but also bordering the military installation borders the county as well. So we're looking at hospitals, schools, emergency services, pump stations, water supply, stormwater, sanitary sewer, cybersecurity. We're looking at a number of resilience type of measures and where we need what assets, critical assets that have been identified are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change and how we can make them more resilient.
Excellent.
The Waterways Cabinet is scheduled for a meeting on October 18th from 10 to 2. I just sent out meeting notices today about that. One thing when you met with Public Works and me last week, and we, identified that we would like to have the waterways groups and other environmental groups work more in a partnership with the Department of Public Works, and so we will be talking about that at the next Waterways Cabinet meeting, and I'll develop an agenda next week. I'll be working on that. We touched about a little bit already about the work with GreenVest, and in fact, David Gerald and I had a conversation today with Doug Lashley of GreenVest about projects that they can help us with, including SPCA, and it's just a matter of determining how big that project will be. Yeah. It's a large project anyway. That area drains about 186 acres. So we can get a lot of credit for it under our MS4 permit, plus it'll do quite a bit to improve the water quality in Back Creek. So initially we have to do a H&H study there first, a hydraulic and hydrology study. That has to be done to determine the water flows and how the project can be designed. Then we'll get into design and then construction. So this is a multi-year project and a rather large project to do there, but very worthwhile. I have also been working with the Maryland Pesticide Network on updating our integrated pest management policy. I think I'll have that done this week, and then I can share it with this committee as well as with the Environmental Commission for any feedback, any recommended revisions, and then we can finalize the policy, and then we'll have to promote it within the whole city, all city departments, and do staff education. Let's see. That is, I think it's EV contractor. The other two things are city staff have been working with two groups that have started in the city. One is Save Our Trees, and the other is a group that I'm not sure if they have a permanent name yet, but they are working on establishing community gardens throughout Annapolis to address food deserts. And I've partnered them up with Unity Gardens to see if they can work together. And Unity Gardens also makes grant funds available to groups such as theirs that want to plant community gardens. So they're not part of the city programs, but the city staff have been working with them to get them up and running and connect them with resources such as the Watershed Stewards Program and potential grant funders such as the Chesapeake Bay Trust.
Yeah, and for my colleagues' sake, the Save Our Trees group is composed of a lot of Ward 1 residents, but they got together they're removing invasive species, removing vines from the large canopy trees in our parks, and they're starting with Truxton Park.
Yes, why not start large? So they've had 2 cleanups in Truxton Park so far, and they're going to try to schedule them at least every other month.
Good.
And so the city came up with a waiver and protocol for starting projects, getting permission from either Public Works or Parks and Recreation, depending on where they're working and what kind of safety measures they have to, implement and follow when they do work. And then also work with the city arborist to report where they have cleared trees so that he can keep tabs on where the trees have been cleared, and then we can identify priority areas in the city. Right now, the city arborist does not have a budget for removal of invasives, including English ivy, which is what Save Our Trees, this group, is really after, is the English ivy, because it's the most destructive to trees.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Any questions from the committee? All right, hearing none. If you could stay for at least discussing, we're going to move up next to, and I apologize, Cynthia, if I'm jumping around here. I know I'm going to move up to R3222 because I think you all have comments to that. So that is the Chesapeake Bay Trust. So basically, this is a resolution would waive permit fees for organizations that get, so again, we don't give necessarily. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the Chesapeake Bay Trust, similar to what they do with the county, they manage a portion of our watershed restoration fund money, which we set aside for grants to the community. And so when a community group gets awarded a grant, they use that to pay for whatever, design, installation. And so as a part of the permit review, they have to pay permit fees as a part of, that comes out of that grant money. And so the county, I believe, has waived fees for CBT funded projects. City is not, which, and somebody had sent this to me, and I can't remember who now. I don't think it was you, to introduce this. So I introduced this legislation to do that, but since then there's some other requests about whether or not we want to open this up to other nonprofits. And then there's also a question about the fiscal impact, and the fiscal impact note from staff indicates, what is it, 9,000 or so? It'd be, about $10,000 in lost fees. Now it's kind of, the city's not going to necessarily lose that money because that's $10,000 less in revenue from fees, but that'd be $10,000 that's staying in the restoration fund. I mean, it's still getting spent in the grant program. But all that said, I'm kind of curious what my colleagues think. I'm kind of, I'm mixed on it now, which is funny because I'm the sponsor. I'm just, at this point, especially since we're talking about, well, if we're doing it for these restoration groups, why don't we do it for these other organizations? I'm not sure if, I'm hesitant about going down any kind of slippery slope as far as waiving these fees. It is going to have an impact to our general fund, which also is a concern to me. I'm just not sure the juice is worth the squeeze in this case, especially since once I found out the impact's only $10,000, and that's $10,000 for the entire program. So per project, it's not that much money. It's only maybe a couple $1,000s for the larger projects. So again, I don't know if it's necessarily worth it, but I wanted to see what, I think this is requested by the Bay Trust.
No, the trust approached Department of Public Works, Ms. McCann particularly, because she is project leader for these Chesapeake Bay Trust projects, asking us but if we would do it. I think, she was thinking because the county waives the fees, but the county projects are much larger.
Yeah.
The county grant funded projects are in the $400,000 and up range, whereas the city overall has $300,000, and we apportion those out among 5 or 6 projects, which range between $30,000 for assessments and feasibility studies. I think the largest one was about $160,000. It was a very large project, required some studies to be done as well. So our projects are much smaller, and therefore the fees are much lower.
Yeah. Okay. Any thoughts from the committee on this?
I do, but I'll defer to the Finance Committee.
Well, when I read the fiscal impact note, it sounds like it's a wash, but is it really?
Yes and no.
But it can't be both.
Well,
I mean, would we be taking it out of the watershed restoration fund to pay it?
well, presumably they would, we would either, I guess, the money awarded would probably still be the same amount, except they could use a couple extra $1,000s on something else for the project. It's not necessarily, it's a wash in the sense that in the grand scheme, it's taking money from one pool to another, but it is going to have an impact on the general fund because it's reducing the
Because the
revenue.
fees are paid to the general fund, but as Alderman Savage has pointed out, it just gives a few extra $1,000s to the grantee out of city money that we put towards this program. But then the fees that are charged go to the general fund.
So we're saying that because we only have $300,000 or thereabouts in these projects, it's not going to make a lot of difference. On the other hand, if we don't collect this fee, it's going to fall to the fund balance, which is divided by $175 million. So it's not doing the fund balance much good at all either. And so then the other side of the coin is, should we be thinking about doing this for our other grantees? And my answer to that is yes. You know, if we're giving them a grant and then we're taking money back, part of that gift as a fee, I'd rather have them, if they're worthy of getting a grant from us, I'd rather have them get the full benefit of the grant. And we're in terms of the general budget, general fund, we're talking about chump change here. And in terms of it being dollars for smaller projects that could have a little more impact, feels to me like that's the way to go. So I would make a recommendation to recommend favorably on this resolution, and I would keep an open mind on how we deal with our other grant fees.
Yeah, it's not a bad point. I mean, it seems small, $10,000, but that could potentially pay for a small rain garden somewhere, or at least half the cost of one.
What would the potential burden be if we considered other projects that would want a waiver? I mean, do we have any?
$390,000.
$390,000.
Now, we don't know, but remember, we had a city manager, Tom Andrews, that waived that amount of fees a few years ago. So again, in the scheme of things, but I think your question is valid, and I think that would be something that would go to the Finance Committee and ask, if we start waiving fees cavalierly, how many fees are we waiving?
Yeah, I'm kind of hesitant to go down that road, especially since I sit next to somebody at the meeting who would regularly have raised concerns about waiving fees for city events and parades.
That's different. These have benefits.
In response to Alderwoman Finlayson's question, it goes to how many other projects are brought by other nonprofits and community groups a year, and that can vary from 1 to 3. And the projects, they can be around a little bit more, usually more expensive than these projects. We're looking at ones that are like $100,000 and up. So
Are those still administered through the CBT though?
no. So if you're thinking about waiving fees for other group nonprofits applying to the city for a permit.
So you're talking about, like, for example, the
For like
community grant program or something?
No, if
or-
the Spa Creek Conservancy got a city grant, which we don't do a lot of other city grants, you know, especially in the environmental sector. They came to us for a fee waiver, or they have a DNR grant. And I don't know if this is what you're considering. If they have a grant in hand from another funding entity like MDE or DNR, and they come to the city and they need their permits approved, do we waive their fee? Now, in that case, it's not a city-funded project, but they are some of the same groups who are funding under our Chesapeake Bay Trust projects. And sometimes it's Seven River Keeper or Spa Creek Conservancy. Again, same entity, we're just not funding the project, but they still have to get a permit from the city and pay for it.
Yeah.
It starts to become a very slippery slope.
Yeah, and that's where I'm kind of,
Because we will benefit from their
inclined to-
project, we will get credits, towards our MS4 permit and TMDL credits. But we may not be funding the project.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of inclined not to move forward with it, but because I think, we give grant money, like you said, to other organizations, and I know I criticized waiving fees for to the school district, which I think is a bit different because they have a lot of money, but still.
Is there a goodwill issue here? I mean, we're asking Chesapeake Bay Trust to manage these for us, and then we turn around and stick them with a fee. It just doesn't seem like a friendly way to do business.
Yeah.
I would make a motion to recommend favorably.
I'll second that, but discussion.
I am torn. I don't know. I was gonna second it just for the sake of getting it on the floor. I don't know.
Since I'm no longer the official budget hawk for the city, I feel very generous. I do think there is a goodwill factor here. It does seem strange. We ask somebody to manage this for us and then we charge them fees. I'm not sure what other analogous situations we have. Deputy City Manager Giles mentioned a couple. Again, I think I'd be inclined not to charge them fees either. And as I said earlier, $10,000 as a chunk out of $300,000 is still much more significant than $10,000 falling to the fund balance in a $175 million budget.
Yeah. All right.
Is this going to finance? Is this,
I think it's been.
has it been the finance?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it has been. Any other thoughts from staff?
I don't think it's pressing to make a decision right now. Not that I'm asking you to defer this. The grants that the city made in its first year are largely for feasibility studies, assessments, and design. Only one of those has actually gone to construction, so these are Chesapeake Bay Trust funded ones. Only one of those actually went to construction, so that group was charged a fee for its permit. We have made awards this year, in the second year of this relationship with the trust. Some of those will have to get permitted. Maybe 2 of the 5 will need permits in 2023 likely, or maybe at the end of this year. So a couple more will be coming up for permits, perhaps at the end of this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the other way to think about it is this is directly taxpayer money that we would be giving back to community groups that are awarded these grants to basically do improvements to the environment, to our waterways in the city, where otherwise we'd be kind of taking back some of the taxpayer revenue that was raised just to pay our bureaucratic fees.
If it was coming to the council, then
So in that sense, I could see in this instance of waiving of supporting this and waiving the expenses, the fees. So any other thoughts on this before we
I was
call the
just trying to
question?
see if it had been to finance, and I don't see it on the last 2 finance agendas.
It was a while ago. I'm pretty sure it went. I don't think I was there, but I'm pretty
I
sure
don't
it
have
was.
any.
But all right, so all those in favor of a favorable recommendation on R3222, please say aye.
aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I'm gonna
Abstentions?
abstain.
I like that.
I need more
Yeah,
more info. I'm not going to oppose it.
Understandable, yeah.
we'll have to Kia see if it went to finance.
That's what I asked.
Okay, next, thank you, Ms. Guild. Next ordinance is O 2722, Public Services, Water Service Billing, Waiving Late Penalties. Alderwoman, since this is
It's
yours,
my
would you like to give any
legislation.
introduction?
Sure. I think we all have heard from residents who have had issues with their water bills. Whether it was an issue created by them or issues created by entities out of their control, like the postal system or a pandemic. And in going to the finance director to seek help, I learned that she is not able to waive any fees, period. And so we talked about how we could rectify it, and this legislation allows the finance director to have the ability to waive late fees. Let's be clear, late fees one time for a resident in the city who has a good excuse. And it would be left to the discretion of the finance director. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sponsors.
And I'd like to be added as I missed
8
that meeting,
sponsors.
otherwise I would have.
Who's not sponsored?
Rob, now he is. That's 8.
Okay, all right,
The mayor's not on
That's
it
when I
yet.
was sick.
right. So I totally support this. Today, I had a thing which the finance department did take care of. There was a mailing problem, and the bills had accumulated to $400 and some odd, and the property owner didn't even know that they had a bill. And so the call came. I sent the email in today. They've already taken care of it. I think our finance staff do a good job of managing these bills, and I think this is, if you haven't moved, I will move, and you can second, but I think we need to recommend favorably on this.
Well, I do move favorable recommendation.
Second.
All right, so I do have a little bit, I want to make sure we put our new city attorney to work today, since he was so kind enough to join us. So I looked this over, and I entirely support it, but my one question, because one of the issues that a constituent of mine came to me with was she was asserting she wasn't properly notified that her service was going to get turned off. And that's a separate question. But what happened was her water service was cut off. And she says she's never missed a payment, so she got it paid. And then, but she was still apparently charged. It's like a $40, it's in a different section.
Late fee.
It's, well, no, it's like a $40 or $50 turn back on fee. Every time
Oh.
they come on, they have to pay it. And so that was another fee where I was like, well, you know, should they have authority to waive that one too? Because I don't think as written it does, because it's in a different, if I can find it, it's in a different section. Let me see. So they were looking at chapter 1608. And let's see if I can find this.
1604 or 1608?
Yeah, charge of $40. This is, so I'm looking at, so legislation impacts, what's the section? 1604.90. Well, it creates a new one. But the section of code I was looking at is 1608.40, charges users within the city, and it goes down on C, or D. Charge of $40 shall be billed each time for non-payment when a customer requests the city to turn on, turn off, or reconnect any water supply. And so I don't know if that's a fee that you would also.
I guess we could amend it to add turn back on fees?
Yeah, it's
Well, I guess the first question is that impacted by this legislation currently as written?
I have to check the code. I don't
Okay.
know the exact code.
You
Okay.
mean you've been here for 2 weeks and you don't know the code yet? I mean, really?
So that's 040, and it doesn't look like this
16.04
legislation affects.
you're looking at,
Yeah,
or?
16.08.040 is what I'm looking at. Now that's going to have, I don't want to mess this up. Maybe I'll just have separate legislation if I want to do that. But at least this helps to give
Yeah.
them the ability to waive some fees. But that's just one in particular that I was contacted about. And I get the rationale behind having that fee. It's staff time. We're going to send them out. If they're turning it on, it's. But I suppose if we go down this road in the future, we could always say that they could waive that fee once every. I think you have it
Once
set
a
up
year.
where it's once a year. Yeah. But okay.
So did you notice section D? This strikes me that this legislation, once again, the Office of Law did a lot more than what was requested in the legislation, which has to do with giving the director the power to waive the fees, because in section D, it says if the property owner waives water and sewer, they're also waiving trash collection. Did you, as the sponsor, did you really want to get into all of that?
I don't think the finance director wanted to get into all that. Where are you
Oh, I
seeing
see.
that language?
Second page, section D, the last amount that's in bold, or capital letters.
I see, the charge for refuse collection shall also be terminated until water.
And the refuse collection is currently in the code, but not the
Well,
sewer.
this is all new,
Well,
because it's all in caps.
but it's part of it's in D below, except for the sewer. The sewer service is, and that's where I guess. So that makes it when the owner of a resident property terminates water and sewer service. So they'd have to terminate both services for at least 1/4.
Does all of that go to finance, or does sewer go to, refuse go to Public Works?
Public Works. And also the stormwater resiliency fee, or whatever we call it now. I don't have a problem with it. I just noticed that.
I think the idea is if somebody's deliberately shutting off their service, it's probably
They're
because they're
shutting
moving or
everything off.
something. So they're just shutting everything
Okay.
off. So,
Then
right?
why aren't they also shutting off their stormwater resiliency fee?
Will that be part of the?
So will they still be billed?
Well, because
quarterly for
they
the-
can't turn off their impervious surface. The pavement's going to be there whether or not they want it, but so they'll still get the. Well, that's a good question though, because that would be attached to the. Which one? The water service.
Well, it comes
So they'd have
out.
0 on the water service, but they'd probably still be charged for the water.
The quarterly
Utility.
bill is a 4-part bill. One is for water. Sewer is actually a surcharge on water. So whatever you consume, you pay 80% of that for sewer, assuming whatever you're consuming is going back out.
Yeah.
And then there's the refuse fee, but we've also added the stormwater resiliency fee.
Yeah,
So-
but that's not for an actual service.
No, well, it is, because we're doing the BMPs for managing the
True.
stormwater. But
But it's not based on a metered,
no,
unless you're
it's
saying
not.
impervious surface.
No, it's a fee, what is this, $19.99 now or something
Yeah.
per quarter period. So I guess by leaving that out, it assumes that even if you discontinue your service for these 3 things, you're still going to get a bill for stormwater management.
Yeah, because they can't turn off the rain, right?
Office of Law.
I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense. Any other questions about this? We're almost at 5. Okay. All those in favor of a favorable recommendation to this legislation, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries, and thank you, Office of Law. All right, I think that concludes our meeting. Anything else for the good of the order?
No?
All righty, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Or as
Meeting
my
adjourned.
mom says, aye.